All right, so this is the EverQuest Next classes panel. So obviously it's about EverQuest Next, not Landmark. Classes don't particularly apply to that one. So if you've been to the previous panels, you're going to hear some of the same stuff you did before, but these are our ideas, the things that we've put together over the last 2 years. These aren't set in stone. We are absolutely committed to working with you guys and everybody else who's interested in the games in making the best possible games. So while we do have answers for your questions, don't take them as gospel at this point in time. Things are subject to change based on feedback and things like that, and we really want to do that. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of this, but I want to preempt a couple of them to make it really easy. If we're not talking about a class during this panel, don't ask if we're going to have it in the game. The answer is going to be we haven't announced it yet, and we'll announce those things in the future. So I can save you time from standing in line to come up to only get that answer. We're talking about the mechanics of how we as a team design and build a class, and how you as players will be able to interact with the class system in EverQuest Next. So that should frame the kind of things you can expect to hear from these guys up here. And going across, I'd like to introduce the people that are here. Welcome, Steve, by the way. Michael Mann on the end. He's our class and combat lead. Steve Klug, who you've met before, is our technical director. Aaron Carlson here on the end is our lead animator. Michelle Shade is our principal FX artist. And Darren McPherson, sitting in the middle, is our lead designer. So,
ready?
In the previous ones, we give away a free Nagy hat in all of our panels, so Darren's got the question for you this time.
All right, so what was Fiona Vai's original character class? What did she start as?
Gentleman right here. All right.
Correct. You are correct, sir.
What was the answer?
Paladin.
Paladin. Yes, the answer was Paladin.
Weird, but yes, it's true.
All right, so let's get into it.
Let's start. Is everyone excited?
Yeah!
So we thought that what we could do, and I want to make sure I'm talking into this. Yeah, how's that? Good? We wanted to make sure, and we thought that the best way for us to explain the classes was to walk you through our process. First, I'm going to give you an overview on Michael Mann's suggestion, and then I'm going to go into some details. So the very first thing that we do is we sit down as a group. There's a group of class designers and other designers, and we really try to involve everybody on the team. And we talk about what sort of feelings we want the class to evoke. Do we want you to feel very powerful? Do we want you to feel stealthy? Do we want you to feel brutish or strong? When you feel, when you think, and I'll say the word feeling a lot here, but that's really what we want. We want you to be emotional about your character class. And so that really guides a lot of the decisions that we've made. So the second thing that we do is we look at the iconic abilities that these types of classes, say the warrior, has had in the past. And then we integrate it into our new functionality. You know, we have been talking a lot about destructibility. Is anyone here excited about destructibility?
Yeah!
So does destructibility completely change the game, or what?
Yeah.
Yes. So when we sit down and we talk about these classes, we integrate them into all the new things that we're doing, and we come up with some really exciting things. And then we talk about iconic characters from media, from literature, things that people gravitate toward. These are iconic characters that people have loved for years, and they've loved them for very specific reasons because they do evoke these emotions. So let's walk through the process of what the warrior is. We decided that we wanted the warrior to be destructive and strong. And when you play a warrior, we want you to feel like a brute, like a bull in a china shop. You don't do things delicately as a warrior, okay? You don't hold fragile things. You don't serve at a dinner party, right? You are violent and you are destructive. So we give him some abilities: leap, whirlwind, shield bash. All of these abilities push him toward this goal. And the iconic characters among the iconic characters that we associate with him are the Juggernaut, right? This unstoppable force. and the Hulk, who is this raging beast, and the Hulk doesn't serve at dinner parties. So these are, and we don't do this because we want them to have green skin or we want them to have, the Sidorak gem or any of that stuff. We do this so that we get an idea, and then we can say, hey, when we talk to Aaron and Michelle, we think, okay, these are the iconic characters, and I'll show you what that means here. So our warrior is a wrecking ball. We just saw. I'm going to play this again. So this is the warrior's leap. So these are some iconic poses in the leap. You see the middle pose there when he's in the air. Who does that look like? Arms bent back, right? The reason that comic book artists have used these poses is because it's a very simple and easy way for you to denote power and strength. And these poses are associated with these things, and we want you to feel powerful and strong when you're playing. So it also has to be fun. We run everything through what we call the fun filter, and all of our abilities need to be very fun to play. You don't have a lot of abilities in this game as a character class. Remember, you've got lots of character classes. You'll actually have far more character classes than you do have in a class for abilities. So we make sure that each one of these is fun, and each one of these promotes the type of gameplay and feeling that we want for each class. We also make sure that they're fun to look at. If things are fun to use, but no one is impressed when you use them, and you're not impressed when you use them, then we've missed the point. And so, Aaron and Michelle and the particle team and the animation team, some of which are here in the audience. If you wave your hand if you're on the EQ Next team and you do some of this stuff. So there's Lisa in the back, and so we've got lots of great people who are very invested in this. For example, Lisa in the back did the Void Goliath, the particles, when he raises his fists and the fountains of destruction come up. Did that evoke emotion? Did people like that? You guys like that? Okay. Each one of our abilities should feel awesome. We really want players to look at other people and go, oh, wow, what did he just do? And in our game, you can be what he is. You don't have to re-roll at all. You can just go collect that class. Let's see. This is Aaron. Do you want to talk a little bit, Aaron?
Yeah, okay. So let's take a look at some of the classes in EQ Next. We're gonna focus in on just 3 that show a good example of how the classes differ, because all 3 of these are using the two-handed sword. So what we talk about a lot in animation for the classes, we talk about personality. We want a specific personality to come across. Even in the stances and the silhouettes, are they stoic? Are they high energy? Are they creepy or sinister? We want to make sure that we broadcast that in every aspect of the class, starting from just their general posing, so that when you're playing that class, you really feel like you're carrying that persona. And then we carry that on into the abilities, and we work with design to make sure that we're hitting those marks, we're hitting the iconics that we want to sell.
Yeah, and so you can see in these animations as they loop through that we really wanted players to feel there was a heaviness to them. Billy spoke about this yesterday in the panel we had. There's weight. When you land as a character class, as a warrior, there's weight, there's gravity. Sound adds to this, the particles add to this, and the roar of the cairn adds to this. It's very good. So let's get down to some brass tacks and nuts and bolts here. So at this point, you know what the character class process is for us. We do this for every character class. We've got a lot of them, but we really are committed to making each one of them feel amazing. So your class, when you pick a class, it determines your armor, the types of armor you can wear. Each class has a single armor, a type, plate or cloth or leather, and the weapons that you can use. Each class comes with a pair of weapons that they can use. And weapon abilities are also determined, and the character abilities are also determined by your character class choice. The weapon abilities, weapons in our game are more than just models with statistics on them. They're meaningful to you. Not only do each, and as I mentioned yesterday, not only do all of the items in the game, particularly the armor and the weapons, have mechanics around them, so you would have a choice between using, say, a King Ocean longsword versus a Dwarven longsword. There's mechanics in there, but your weapons determine the 4 unique abilities that your character class has when they wield them. And if you have a pair of character classes, so let's say we have the warrior and an additional class that we're not naming, that both use a sword and shield. The warrior, he has a leap attack as part of this these weapon abilities. This other class might have a hammer throw. So not all of each individual class has unique abilities based on these weapons. So they're more than just stats and damage. And we really wanted these abilities to magnify and to further the goals, which are that you should feel something. Your feeling should be evoked when you play these individual classes.
One thing that I'd like to add, thanks everyone, I decided I wanted to come up with
Jeff Butler, hello.
One thing that's also very important, which you might have seen if you were looking very closely at Aaron's visualizations of a two-handed sword wielding character. He had 3 different characters up there. Each one of them had the exact same two-handed sword in their hand, and they were 3 different character classes, but they weren't carrying the sword in the same way. They weren't animating in the same way. So when we talk about the variety of weapons that player characters are going to wield, clearly two-handed swords are probably going to be carried by more than one class. And you might ask yourself, if one class is standing there in full heavy plate carrying a two-handed sword and so is another one, how do I tell the difference between them? If I, for instance, if I see an NPC, how do I know what abilities he's going to use on me if I can't tell what class he is? And the answer is, you will be able to tell what class he is because he will be standing in a different way. He will be in a different pose. He will animate differently. And Aaron's videos actually showed that pretty clearly. One guy might carry his two-handed sword behind him all the time. That might be his starting pose. The other guy might carry it like up over his head, swing downward with most of his primary attacks. It's all about visual silhouette, and then that sense of recognition that you'll gain as a player from watching them move in the world you become familiar with.
Yeah, so we talked about this visual language as our terminology, and that is not only in the animations, the character classes, so that you've got a lot of classes. How do you know who's who? Well, you can tell, and there's a lot of player knowledge here. So experienced players will be able to tell the NPCs from each other, will be able to tell the character classes from one another, so that's very important to us. So let's go over character abilities. Character abilities are well, they come in 4 different flavors, and these are non-weapon specific abilities. The very first one is movement. So a movement might be a teleport or a leap or a jump. Offense might be fireball. It might be magic missile. Defensive might be a shield wall or a spell reflect. And utility could be things like a desummon spell or an invisibility spell or the ability to have clones appear to distract enemies. And these all are very important, and Michael Mann will give you some different examples. But so each character class has a unique or semi-unique set of these abilities. We wanted the Blade Master to have all 4 of these things because he does all of these things in equal measure. Whereas the Rogue is a very offensive character class, but has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. So he gets 2 offensive and 2 utility.
Rogues may take offensive though.
They are very offensive, yes. The wizard, he needs to be able to move around the battlefield and be able to defend himself, so he gets a pair of movement abilities, a defense slot and an offense slot. Now obviously he's got his weapon abilities too, so that's part of the way that he does his damage. And the Tempest, which is a character class that you'll see at the very end of this, and we got some really cool unique animations and particles to further exemplify what our goals are. He's also movement oriented. He does, one of his things is he moves around the battlefield. He has a pair of movement abilities, offensive and utility abilities. So, as we mentioned yesterday, you get to collect all of these classes. As you're adventuring through the world, you'll have the opportunity to find and collect these classes. And every class is advanced individually. So you may have a tier 4 warrior, and a tier 2 wizard, and a tier 1 rogue, and all these things are different. So you can choose who you play at any given time. Swapping between them with relative ease outside of combat. We're still working on all the technical issues with this, but it's important to us for you to have the freedom of choice, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. This really opens up a lot of new gameplay. I know there's a lot of people who really just want to ever be one class, but the way multi-classing works, and Michael will explain this in a minute, really want to get more things. And we have confidence that most of you will love to play this way. Playing how you want where you want and when you want is a big goal for us. Any progression that you earn while playing, let's say, your warrior, can be applied to any of the character classes that you've progressed. So you don't just have to be your warrior to advance your warrior. This isn't a skill-based game. So we hope that that's something that's exciting to you. Does that sound like something that's cool? Opens up a lot of freedom. So often you may want to play an alt, or in our case, a different class, but your friends are doing something that you want to be part of, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I don't have choice there, and choice is a big thing for us. So we thought it would be nice to have this flexibility. We also want you to feel free to play what you want, when you want, regardless of whether it's a raid or a group. EverQuest Next does not require the use of tanks and healers. Our combat mechanics and our AI do not support dedicated healers and dedicated healers and focused tanks. It doesn't work. We don't want a group of people, which has happened to everybody in this room, if you ever done anything that involves a group, to be stuck, not being able to do the content that you want because your buddy didn't log in, who happens to be the one role that you need. And that was a big thing for us, to be able to play what you want when you want. And our combat model, which we're not talking about in detail today, but we really wanted it to be a very visceral, active, movement-oriented gameplay style that really has everybody responsible for their own safety, and everybody is able to be part of the action.
Before you pop off that slide, Darren. Pop back. One thing that we've been asked fairly often related to the player characters that this slide exemplifies fairly well is the concept that characters would be able to choose the appearance of their individual avatar. She's a great example of a heavily armored, fully armored female warrior. People should understand that we're providing everyone the choice. It can't be overemphasized because people continue to ask us about the same issue. You will be able to choose how your character looks. You can have a sexy outfit. You can have a fully, heavily armored appearance, whatever suits your needs. And that's a great concept piece that kind of answers that question for people.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Super loud? Perfect. So in EverQuest Next, we want you to be able to build the character that you want. It's very important to us. It's something we talk about a lot, actually. As you play through the game, you are able to collect many classes, and you use those abilities in the character abilities to create different class builds that match your personality and your playstyle, right? So I'm just going to get into it. I think the best way to explain multi-classing is just to go through an example, right? So here's a warrior. You guys got to see the warrior during the debut, yes? Did you like how it looked like he played? Yeah. I was the warrior, by the way. I have to go through. Thank you. Yeah. Sure. So I enjoyed playing the warrior. I thought he was actually a lot of fun. You know, he goes and he has a strong personality, right? He crashes down on the ground and he feels powerful when I play him. He's very destructive, and I thought that was very cool. Yeah.
I think there were several examples where the warrior would have gone down if the wizard had not been there to DPS.
Who was playing the wizard?
Yeah. I think I was probably the wizard.
Integral, yes.
Whatever, dude. Anyway, so, that felt really cool, and that was something that was very enjoyable, but that might not be for every situation. It might not fit my mood, or whatever it is. I might want to change that to do something a little more particular to what I want to do. I might want to give her, maybe a slightly darker personality, or make her kill casters, a lot easier, or make her a little more sneaky. And that's where multi-classing comes in, and we're gonna discuss that right now. So you can't just go about by taking all the abilities you get from all your other classes and just like throwing them into a pot and then being like, all right, I've got a class. It's so awesome. It's got everything. There's an economy to creating your class, and I'll kind of explain what that means. It's kind of a heavy term. When you pick your class, it comes with a couple of things, as Darren mentioned earlier, right? It comes with the type of armor you wear, the type of weapon you wield, and also your weapon abilities. These three things form the core of your class, and you cannot change those as long as you're that class, right? So as a warrior, for instance, I have heavy armor. I have, in the demo, we had a hammer and a shield, And then I have a number of weapon abilities. Forceful Blow was his basic attack. It was the one where he smashes the ground and you see the distortion and all that cool stuff. Those all come with your class. And then we have character abilities. Character abilities also come with your class, but that's where you can adjust things. So, I made this awesome slide. I had to show it. I highlighted those. I'm not an artist, so I was pretty proud of this.
Amazing work.
Yes. Well,
Give him a round. Give him a round.
Impressive effects.
we aim to please. So these are the areas that you cannot customize in your class. And we're going to talk about the character abilities. Right now, that's most of the area. There are other areas, but we'll fill you guys in on the basics first, and then in the future we'll bring out more information on customization. So the character abilities. I started with leap. You see me, I leap over things, and when I come down, I smash. And actually, in the demo, I leapt over way too many things. We had to redo that a couple times.
He kept flying off.
I apologize, yes. But anyway, that leap doesn't fit the theme of what we talked about, right? We want to make a dark character. We wanted to make it so it was a little sneakier. And me flying through the air like Hulk isn't very sneaky, right? And I also want to be able to kill casters a little bit easier. So we're gonna kick out leap, and I'm going to look through all of the classes that I'm able to unlock. I check through and I try and find a teleport, and hopefully one that has a dark flavor to it. So I cruise over and I find a class that has that. Yes, sweet. I go and I unlock that class and I advance it up to the point where I can get that ability. We're going to call this ability Path of Shadows. So I find the dude, I level him up, I unlock it, and I equip it. Now, instead of leap, I can use Path of Shadows. Path of Shadows is a shadow flavored teleport ability. I equip that, and now I'm able to sneak up on casters and do things. But as I'm playing, I find out that what I really want to do is teleport in and Whirlwind, but Whirlwind and Path of Shadows are too expensive to use together, right? Because Path of Shadows does some other things other than teleport. So that's a problem, but don't worry, it's a problem we actually fix with itemization. So we talk about how items aren't necessarily just items. We don't come to the game and it's not just an icon with a model and a group of stats. You actually use the items to adjust your abilities. So in this instance, the example is I get this awesome ring that looks kind of like the One Ring. It doesn't make me invisible. What it does do is it allows me to teleport. It makes all of my teleport abilities that cost less energy, right? So what that allows me to do is I equip it. I can now Path of Shadows and Whirlwind, one right after another. So I go through and I create these combos. And this is just one small combo, actually. Our abilities are all categorized and stuff like this, and we have different effects on all the items that allow you to do this to your heart's content. Like, we really want to make these things important to your class builds. You can adjust and create many of these. So this is just one example. So now we're going to build this guy. We're going to finish out because you get the general idea, I think. You guys understand it? Yeah. Cool, awesome, all right.
How cool is that?
Is that cool? Does that sound good? So I'm going to repeat this process, right? I go through and I find a class that has mana burn. I equip that in my offensive selects. It does damage. I find a spell reflect from a different class. I equip that, and I get unsummoned. In case they have pets or anything like that, I can unsummon them. So now I am an anti-caster. I'm gonna teleport in. I'm gonna just destroy these guys, and that's my character build. Right? I go and I also collect some items that match the types of abilities that these are. I can get a bunch of items that change my teleport, or I can get some items that change each one of the individual types of abilities I want. And so now you guys can start to see where the play from the different character ability loadouts come into play, right? So I have this. I have one of each type, but there are classes that have two offensive and whatnot. And so the way you build your classes will be different based on the base class that you have. And all that's left to do now is to save off your class build so that you're able to use it when you want. And so I call this one, I actually call it the Mage Pane. When you're saving off, you're able to call it whatever you'd like. And what's important to note is, this is something that we want you guys to experiment to, express creativity and play around with. If you want to make a sneaky archer, you're welcome to. If you have, like a dark elf ranger that you've been dying to create, you're able to do that as well. So that's an example of that. So now we have a video of the Tempest that we were able to put together. This Tempest class is it's multi-class for some of the abilities from the demo. So here it is. The Tempest is a storm flavored class. He has a two-handed sword and he focuses on moving around a lot and doing basically devastating attacks, right? As you can see, those are his weapon abilities, not that one. Now we're getting into the character abilities. So really you get quite a bit of functionality and differentiation between all of your different classes. And you can see here the dramatic posing and all that sort of stuff. So I guess we're going to open it up to Q&A, please.
So, one thing that I wanted to ask, how many people here have played Magic the Gathering? How many people here have played League of Legends? So, I think a lot of you will understand a key concept that we're trying to push here. And that is that every time a new expansion comes out in Magic the Gathering, every time they add a new character in League of Legends, it alters the strategic landscape of the game. So, every time we add new items to this game, every time we add a new character class to the game, the strategic landscape is altered. Keeps things fresh, keeps people who care about the minutiae of character building, playing the game, eternally interested and evergreen in terms of what's going on. What's the best set of items and what's the best set of abilities for me to execute exactly what I like to do every Saturday night when I go raiding with my buddies, so on and so forth. It's not the same static game from month to month.
All right, so I'm entirely certain no one has any questions, right?
No,
Awesome. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we're done now. Go ahead and form a line. I'm going to remind everybody, don't get in line if you want to ask about is your class in the game, because we've come to the communal decision that every time somebody asks that question, we're going to randomly remove one of the existing classes from the game. And so you can't even troll other people by trying to call out their classes. So, all right, guys, let's go.
All right, so with 4 weapon abilities, can you do combinations? Can you do a sequence of attacks that's, do, say, a different ability?
So the weapon abilities are, they come with your class, right? So you cannot actually customize those. If you'd like to change those, you would pick a new class and roll from there.
Okay.
So
Or change your weapon.
or you could change your weapon, yes.
I think the question was more about, are we going to support things like combos? Or by combining abilities one after the other, do you get a different effect than using them independently? I think that was the question.
Was that more? I'm sorry. Yes. So when we build a class, we build it as a full package. They have abilities that interact with each other and do all those sorts of things. And then also, it's a fairly elaborate system that allows you to do things one after another with your abilities, even ones that we don't necessarily supply right away.
Part of the fun to play is making sure that your abilities work well together. So that's a great question.
With all the dynamic action that's going on, the targeting is going to be locked on a specific target, or is it going to be whatever you're facing is what you're hitting?
So the exact details of all the combat system stuff that we're going to reveal over time. But we have been saying that your weapons, for example, if you have a broadsword with a very long blade and you swing, it's going to hit everybody in that area. So a lot of these abilities don't require a target. You just swing.
It's also going to hit everything.
Right. So you want to blow up a wall, you can. If your weapon is good enough, you can do that with your sword swing. So.
One of our main goals is to kind of keep your face up out of your refresh bar and your buff area and all that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, we can't say enough. We're not going to encourage you to play the game of watching your refreshing icons in EverQuest Next.
Whack-a-mole was fun when I was 7. Not so much now.
Yeah, I love the idea of multi-classing, but I was wondering, if everyone can just do whatever they want, how are you going to prevent people from min-maxing and just gravitating towards one, the most powerful build, like someone uploaded on a wiki, and so it's really powerful, and just everyone plays that exact build.
So there's actually a lot of mechanisms that we put into the system that I'm not going to say they're going to be perfect, but they narrow down the opportunity for total exploits. Some of the choice things in there that you have to make are not only for flavor but also for balance reasons, right? So I can't just get a class with 5, offensive character abilities and just go to town doing more DPS than everybody else. That's not really an option. There will, balancing and all that stuff is always an ongoing process. So it's something we work on.
And it speaks to Jeff mentioned the changing strategy on the landscape of this game. And one of the things that whenever we introduce items, we can introduce a single item that'll change the dynamic of the whole game. I'm a min-maxer. I want to be able to min-max. Exploiting and min-maxing are not the same thing. And we want to enable players who go out there who want to collect every item to augment a specific build that they have. That's great. That's gameplay we encourage.
One of the things, by the way, I forgot to mention at the very beginning is inline, please, we haven't had a problem yet, but please limit it to one question. And if you have more than one, you can go back to the line and work your way back up to the front.
Once again, thank you very much for all you guys do. Kind of in the same line as the last question, do you feel you'll have an issue balancing all these great environmental and movement type abilities with, end game rating? Because a lot of these things probably wouldn't work on, the iron golem that we saw rampage through the castle the other day.
So, given the fact that so many new things are in EverQuest Next, I think it would be arrogant for us to assume that we will have anticipated every potential permutation of these things and have created a structure that would prevent any sort of imbalance. But one thing that I can tell you is we've got quite a bit of experience from the combined number of years of people that have worked on the team, both in creating games and maintaining live products. We'll be there with you, right? We play our games. Literally everyone involved participates in the process. We play the game, and the balance will be an ongoing process. We'll do as good a job as humanly possible based on our experience.
Jeff beat me to it. I was going to say no.
Isn't that Terry's line?
Yeah.
They've been stealing it a few times.
So I'm a long-term magician in EverQuest 1. I'm not going to ask if the game's going to have mages, but you did mention unsummon, so I'm going to assume there are going to be pet classes, pet skills, but with this kind of visceral, quick-paced combat, it doesn't really lend itself to having like a long-term pet. Are pets in this game going to just be something for one fight? Or?
Yeah, we've definitely spoken about how the AI system works, how vibrant and amazing the emergent AI system works. It's applied to pets as well. So they aren't dummy fire, jabobbers that we're familiar with. They won't get stuck on rocks. All of those things won't happen. The AI is smart.
But is there room in the skill system for a permanent pet, or is this going to be one fight stuff?
I suspect it will have all variations of pets.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was curious. I saw up on the screen that y'all had 4 weapon abilities and then 4 character abilities. I'm wondering if that's going to be the limit or if y'all plan on adding more later on during the development process.
So the plan is that we will add more, but not necessarily more slots. So that currently is the number of total slots that you can use at once, and we'll be adding many more classes and stuff like that in the future that you can slot in.
And there's more to this system than we're talking about today. So we'll announce more in the future.
Yep.
Hello. When I'm watching demo, and there's a lot of particle from one character, and I'm wondering if there are like 6 players in the same place, and 6 particles, you won't see anything, maybe too much particle?
Well, I'll take this one because
Six golems at the same time?
so you have to understand that during the debut and the videos that you've seen, we were trying to show off the most amazing things that we could for the players to see. So what we showed you there is not what the average person would be able to do. They won't be able to wreak just complete destruction in 2 seconds.
Yeah, Terry was
later in the game.
Terry was piloting the Void Goliath.
Yes, that was me.
demo.
I was
And
blowing up the entire world.
He just
I loved that.
kept spamming his temper ability over and over again. So
But
there'll be refreshes so that
Yeah.
we recognized that what we were showing was something that if you had 6 people there, it would not be, you wouldn't be able to see what was going on. And so the game will be balanced around the idea of having larger numbers of people together, all with destructive abilities and things like that, so that you can see what's going on.
All right, so going back to the multi-classing, is this true multi-classing where you can have, like one rogue ability, a wizard ability, a warrior ability, a healing ability, or are you stuck with warrior and wizard?
within your secondary abilities,
Yeah.
yes. Character abilities, sorry, character abilities.
And yeah, there's, I wish we could talk about it. There's more to come as well for customization.
Yeah, the character abilities that you can customize come from anything that you unlock. So it doesn't, they don't all have to be of a, like, there isn't a secondary class that you equip from.
In regards to combat in groups and in raids, are you envisioning more of a role-less type of dynamic where nobody really has to heal anybody else, everybody's just in charge of avoiding damage on their own, and everybody's just kind of doing their own DPS while avoiding damage? Or do you expect raids to have some characters that are more healing oriented or tanking oriented? I know you said there's no specific classes that are only tanking or only healing, but is there any that lean more towards one role?
I can answer. Yeah, we do have classes that I don't want to say lean towards a role, but certainly will have abilities that fit more in line with what you think of as a healer or a tank or something like that. It's important to us that if you enjoy playing defensively, say you're a warrior and you're used to, being the front line, we still want you to be able to do that. We want you to be able to play the way that you want to play, basically. But what we mentioned when we mentioned it earlier is what we don't want is staring at a threat meter and insulting the the NPC's mom to get him to attack you like that. That's not the kind of gameplay we're looking for. So we'll allow defensive play, we'll allow stuff like that.
To be very clear, Jeff, you want to?
One point to make there is that our NPCs aren't stupid enough to attack the same person over and over and over again while the rest of the party is killing them. They will be able to figure out how you're hurting them, and they will stop you from doing it. That's what they do.
So while we definitely don't have those mechanics in there, we want you to be able to play defensively and play a support role. But we're very careful to not have to require them so that your 10 buddies or your 6 buddies or whatever can do content without your 7th friend there who's the tank. We don't want that.
He actually kind of had my same question. I'm assuming you guys are kind of going towards like a Tarek thing where you don't really need an actual healer. So my other question would be, is there a limit to the classes one particular character can obtain, or is it just one person can get all the abilities, all the classes?
There isn't currently a limit.
There's no limit.
We're planning on. Yeah.
We spoke about a few player-imposed limitations, things like faction. If a faction wanted you to act a certain way before they would train you to, say, be an assassin or a Shadow Knight, or these are hypothetical classes. You may not be able to be that character class until you act accordingly, but there's no artificial limitation.
We will be engaging the community about race class restrictions. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, you're familiar with like the Dwarven Defender. So in the roundtable, we'll probably be talking to the community, engaging their interest for that sort of thing, right? But in general, you won't have a ceiling on the number of character classes that you can personally collect on a single avatar. I mean, that would kind of kill the strategic landscape of the game as it rolled forward. We hope for a great longevity in this product. I don't know how many character classes we would ultimately end up with after 10 years, but it's going to be way more than we originally launched with. We don't necessarily want to force you to create an alt for every 30 collected character classes.
Bad news.
In some other games that have gotten rid of like the tank healer kind of roles, I've seen a collapse of teamwork and group strategy. What kind of things are you guys doing to counteract that possibility?
We touched on it earlier. The AI really does a lot for us in this area. You will have to form strategies. These NPCs don't just do things on a triggered time basis. They actually will figure out what you're doing and then counteract them. And so you need to come up with different strategies and different things like that. You will have to work together in order to get these things done. We like that sort of gameplay, and it helps to build a community and all sorts of things, right? I want to go in and I want to play with people that I play well with, or that that I think play well, and all that sort of thing. So we definitely are cognizant that has happened before, but we will require playing with people and forming strategies and stuff.
I think one thing that you'll see from us, and we'll demonstrate this as we get deeper into combat, as we talk more about EverQuest Next in the upcoming months, we have a very detailed and intricate plan for the strategy and tactics of moving around and fighting. The NPCs are capable of executing strategy and tactics, and you'll require them to overcome them. We are saying that no one specific role or pair of roles is integral to unlocking the strategy of defeating each encounter. And that's one of the things, as game designers, it's kind of a broader answer. Going all the way back to the original MMOs and even some single-player games where there were multiple characters on the screen at one point in time, we've had this sense of simplistic tactics where one character absorbs the focus and damage of one or more attackers, and one other character keeps that character alive, while all the other characters get to effectively do whatever they wanted to and have fun. It's really that core thing that we are releasing. It's not to say that we are walking away from roles. It is certainly not to say that we are walking away from responsibility, both personal, strategic, and tactical responsibility. Effectively, we want every single person playing the game to have fun. I refuse to have my guild fall apart because Terry decides he does not want to play a particular massively multiplayer game anymore, and he was our primary healer. This is a responsibility that we created as game developers, and we are abandoning it, right? We are not going to put our players through that. We've seen the damage that it's caused over the course of the last 15 years. We are moving beyond it with this design.
Can I get an amen on that? Very good.
I like being the person that everybody was dependent on. I mean, why did you think I moved into the producer role?
And you know, Terry, it's as if Terry just asked the question, right? He said he liked being the person that everyone depended upon. You know, I was the off tank in my guild for many years. I also played that role because I liked being the person that everyone depended on, because I knew I would be there for everybody. In all love to the healers and tanks who've sacrificed, in some cases, their own personal enjoyment. Why could you not play an alt on Monday night? Well, because people wanted you to come tank. So you dumped what you wanted to do, and you went and did what other people wanted you to do for them. Now, the cohesion that's created in our communities is significant to us, so we won't be abandoning roles. We won't be taking the care and the interest that you have shown in creating your characters and throwing it away. We are going to latch onto that and perpetuate it, just not in a way that creates the situation that we described before.
So the Goblin Horde starts coming over the hill, and you have a bunch of mages blowing things up with fireballs, rangers doing arrow storms, that kind of stuff, right? Games typically, when you remove again the tank healer DPS archetype, have a very difficult time recognizing the contribution of more support or defensive oriented characters. How do you see these support or defensive oriented characters working in situations like that? And will the game recognize their contribution? If so, how?
Yes.
Thank you.
It absolutely will. These guys have come up with great ideas on just how we can recognize and reward that sort of support and those roles in combat and non-combat situations.
I had a question about the number of items. It sounds like since we'll be able to collect items for different abilities and customize our characters, which is great, that we may have a lot of items. Do you have ideas about how to manage the inventory? At least in previous games, that's always been an issue. And also, if we switch abilities and want to switch sets of gear, is there a quick way to do that?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So, were you able to make the debut or the keynote on Wednesday? Did you see the big bag song? No. We do have systems in place that will allow you to easily switch between these and organize them and all sorts of stuff like that. So we are definitely aware of that.
It's definitely something we recognize as a potential issue, so we're designing around that.
It's a focus for our UI design.
And we're pretty familiar with all the mods that have had to be created in surrounding games for inventory management, for swapping out specs and the gear that goes along with it. And you know, anyone who's played a druid in one game and has had to carry 5 sets of gear around with them knows the meaning of this problem.
Thank you for all your work.
I'd like to ask the classes and abilities, will they work the same way in a player versus player environment as they do in a player versus...
What a great question. So we are, we're not releasing a lot of information about how the PvP stuff will work, and this falls into the realm of that. We would love for there to be a very clear relationship between the abilities that you use in the overworld and the abilities that you use in PvP. And we think that potentially all the destruction and all those things make PvP a different landscape than any one of us has seen. But we'll have more information about that in the future. It's a great question.
Yeah, I can say that when we design NPCs, when we design NPCs, we try to make them similar to players.
Right. Same scales.
So not having the trifecta has killed like Neverwinter and Guild Wars 2, as to where the tank players and the healer players can't get groups because they want the other DPS, they don't want the tank slots because they don't do anything other than like buff, or they can't keep aggro and anything. So what are you going to do about that? Because like I've been tanking forever, and not having the main tank role is kind of scary.
So as we said in the presentation, everyone is involved in the action. When we make a defensively themed class, those people absolutely do damage. Those people are absolutely useful. As part of our pass is we make sure that those people can function and have a responsibility within the group or the raid. So it has to be. I know I've played those games that you're talking about. I played those classes that you were talking about. I had a Nord warrior, right? And I know what you are speaking about, and that won't be the case here.
Yeah, I'm a guardian warrior, Neverwinter. Yeah, been there.
Yeah, okay.
But you had mentioned there'd be maybe 40 character classes, and we have to go out and find them all in the world. But what about character creation? Will we get to choose any one of whatever's out there? Will there be a set of maybe 10 starter? Or do we start out as curious adventurers and have to choose whichever one?
Dave mentioned yesterday in the panel the number 8. That's roughly the number that we're targeting. And these would be the typical starting classes for an MMO. Right? Your warrior's going to be there. You can roll that guy, and then when you pick that guy, you pick the warrior, the other 7 need to be collected. So they're not excluded from your list, they just aren't the ones you started with. We didn't want the players to start as nothing, which felt weird.
And one thing that we can't emphasize strongly enough, each one of those 8 starter classes doesn't necessarily force you to move into multi-classing.
That's your choice, yeah.
The intent for those character classes is their enjoyability and their viability in the game be at 10. If you ignore or don't understand or don't care about multi-classing because you were a rogue, you're going to be a rogue, you don't want to be anything but a rogue, you can play the game. The game's being made for you. The ability to multi-class is simply icing on your cake, if that's your choice.
If you like icing. You don't like icing?
If not, you can scrape it off. It's still delicious.
It's still delicious. One slight detail, we use words like starter classes and things like that, just to clarify on that.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's any different than any of the other classes that are available. Those are just the classes available at the start of the game for you to choose from. They are complete.
Not less powerful.
Yeah, they're complete classes.
And they'll be the familiar ones, right?
I've loved most of what I've seen here. The combat system really excites me. I played Secret World. It looks a lot like everyone's going to have something to worry about during a fight. I love that. What worries me is that with Secret World, you had all these different abilities you got to swap out, similar to the system. But you ended up with guilds forcing a requirement of, hey, this is the meta, this is how we're going to do things. It's the same in League where, well, I don't want to see you playing this class like that. I want you to play what everyone says is the best if you're going to be in our guild.
Don't join that guild.
How are you going to look to avoid that?
Yeah, that's a prickly one because it's largely a social issue. I played lots of games where they may have dictated your character class, but it really wasn't necessary for them to do that. So, I don't know.
I've played in guilds that required you to turn your money over to the guild, right? And everything that you harvested, because it wasn't about an individual achievement. It was about a guild achievement. obviously there are social structures with different strictures that are placed upon individual people. It would be somewhat arrogant of us to assume that a crew from elitist jerks is not going to come into Game X and impose whatever social restrictions they choose, whether it's role-playing in favor, whether it has to do with individual roles and power levels, or their understanding of the moment-to-moment ability to DPS in exactly the situation that they are going for at any one point in time. That said, it is an issue of game balance. If there's clearly a golden path, if there's clearly 1 out of 40 characters that can dominate every single situation in the world, if there isn't an even balance and a solid approach to that stuff, then we would have failed. Fortunately, we have some extremely experienced people on the team that will help us avoid falling into any sort of pitfall like that.
We're already setting up balancing systems and stuff like that to make sure that those sorts of situations don't happen.
At least not on our side.
And truthfully, working with the community, as we have always worked with the community since EverQuest launched, that'll be a cornerstone of our ability to succeed in these areas. It's about knowing from firsthand experience and the players who are out there communicating with you what's going on in your product.
So it was kind of reassuring to hear that you have support classes in mind, because that's kind of a role that to me has disappeared from a lot of games. And like you said, you're kind of breaking down the archetypes, no more, sword, shield, and healing sign. My question would be, are you, with the choice that you're giving players, is it possible for someone to advance without doing any damage, just completely support, or with your action kind of focused combat, is damage going to be kind of a necessity?
I mean, for adventuring, not talking about crafting progression or any of those things. You'll need to be involved, otherwise your party members wonder what you're doing. And part of that involvement is doing damage for sure, because we don't want you, as we talked about it, we don't want you staring at the life bars and clicking them and healing them. That's not the gameplay that we're going for. I knew lots of clerics who never swung their weapons at all at EQ because there was no need to. And we don't really have, we're not really supporting that form of gameplay. So we want you to be involved.
Just so we're clear, we got about 3 minutes left. We need 5 minutes to set up the next panel, so we probably have time for 3 to 4 questions, I'm guessing, at this point in time.
Okay, you already answered about the inventory and all the class changing, but I'm curious, you can switch between what you want. Are there going to be a couple, 5 slots or something? Or are you going to be able to save many different configurations that you want to play with?
So we're working on the details of that. Michael, you want to?
Go for it.
Okay, so we're working on the details of that. You'll have some number that you can swap between, but we really don't want to limit your creativity, so I suspect ultimately there'll be a large list.
Mine kind of hits on that also when you talk about the skills or abilities. Are you going to end up with rows and rows of action bars like you see in Apple?
No.
Or are you going to have those available and only so many slots? You're going to fill those slots. You can go, I want this and this and this today when I go out to do that.
That is exactly the way.
Right. You have a.
About it.
That's what I've been wondering.
Yes.
That's it.
You can have a pool of it, and then you take whatever one you need that day.
Your-
And you do the job.
Yes.
Between the weapon skills and
And the four customized.
Your class build is what you've determined that you're using at the moment.
Hi guys, you mentioned that you have 4 weapon slots and then 4 character slots. My question is about dual wielding, and say you have 2 different weapons that you're using, and they have different weapon abilities.
Easy question.
Yeah.
Totally, it's a great question. When you wield a weapon, I wield a hammer and shield. That's a weapon. I wield 2 swords. That's a weapon. You can. You certainly can. You can collect the different weapons, but you'll have. Right, it's effectively a weapon set.
Yeah, we call them weapon sets, and so if I'm the warrior, I have a hammer and a shield, and that's what I have, and then I have another weapon set that might.
But you can take your shield out, and put it with another one.
But if you have, like, say, a long sword and a rapier or something,
Sure, provided that works.
pick one of them, they have different.
So there are many of us that don't really care to use weapons
say like monks, or wear any armor, is there going to be any bonus for those that just don't wear like a weapon?
So the classes are designed with a very specific flavor in mind, and so if we were to do a class, let's say didn't have any armor,
or didn't have any weapons,
that's possible. We can actually do quite a few things with the system that we have.
So like if you were to take off your weapon as a warrior, would you then be unarmed? Is there a bonus for that?
As a warrior, you must wear your things.
Okay.
All right, this is going to be the last
Warrior
question.
things.
Sorry, guys. Please know that we have a Q&A today from 4 to 5. That's an entire hour of questions. So please come back then, and we'll answer whatever questions we can.
Okay, so you said you can collect the classes. How are you going to use the class? How are you going to have us collect the classes? Are you going to use it like how you earn languages, like Goblin and stuff like that?
That's a good question.
Or are you going to use it like, are you going to have to find scrolls like off of mob drops or stuff like that?
You've just explained several of the ways that could happen. So yeah, that's great. Great, good job. You can be on our team. Anyone? Email competition on the team later.
All right, thanks for coming. If you
Stay in school.
Next class.